Morning, Elevation Health, family and friends. February, if you didn't know, is National Heart Health Awareness Month. So I want to cover with you some important topics relative to heart disease. And in fact, three important heart disease myths, which you may have not been aware of, probably are actually involved in this in some way, shape, or form. The three that I'm going to cover right now are: number one, your total cholesterol should be under 200. That's a myth. Number two is statins prevent heart disease. And number three, you need to reduce saturated fat intake to reduce your risk of heart disease. So I want to touch on each of those very briefly. And the reason why this is all important is because heart disease is the leading disease killer in the United States. Every 37 seconds, a life is lost to cardiovascular disease. So for most of you, this is something that really needs to be on your radar. And it's something, unfortunately, we all have to deal with. And most of us wind up in a doctor's office telling you that you need to get on a medication, a statin medication, a blood pressure medication, and then eventually, you're looking at diabetes and other diseases and other problems as a result of the side effects of the medication. So all too often, I've seen this, where the treatments and the side effects become far worse than the disease itself they give it to you for in the first place. So Mythbuster number one, your cholesterol should be under 200. This is absolutely false. Your cholesterol ratio is much more important than your total cholesterol. So do you know what your cholesterol ratio is? If I was to ask you, because you may be one of the people, many people who ask me all the time, hey, my doctor is really concerned about my cholesterol. They said it was too high, it's 230, it's 240, yada, yada, yada. And my first response is, well, what's your cholesterol ratio? And the answer is most of the time, I don't know. And then when I get the blood results, I look, everything's in normal range. So the much more important thing that you need to look at is your total cholesterol divided by your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. Your LDL is of lesser consequence. Your LDL is very, very important. In fact, if you try to lower your LDL, you're at risk of affecting your brain function, increasing your risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And this is exactly what statin medications target and affect. You need that cholesterol. That's what enables the neurons to fire in your brain. And really, every cell in your body is made up of cholesterol. So you need the cholesterol, and you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So your HDL is much more important than your LDL cholesterol when it comes to looking at overall things, the big picture with your cholesterol. And then, of course, your cholesterol ratio. You have to know what your HDL is. Now, if that's low, then there are particular things that you can do to focus on to raise that, as opposed to just the default, not knowing what to do, and then winding up taking a cholesterol medication, which so many people have regretted with all the side effects that come with it. And again, even for those, my concern is even for those who don't have any side effects presently in this moment, day and time. The question is, you never know what tomorrow brings. And really, you don't know how it's affecting your brain, because dementia and Alzheimer's, by the time it's diagnosed, it's too late. It always starts at least a decade before the first symptoms are recognizable. So this is really, really important to consider. Wouldn't you agree? The second Mythbuster is statins prevent heart disease. False. False. Years ago, this is back in the 90s, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a study. It had 1,000 participants in a 4-year Yale study. It showed that people with low total cholesterol have just as many heart attacks as those with high cholesterol. Did you know that? Crazy stuff. Yeah, even recent studies show that, cholesterol and LDL levels are not an indication of heart disease risk, and that statin treatments are of doubtful benefit, quote unquote, as a form of primary prevention for this reason. Actuaries, when they do the statistics on this, showed only 4 days of life extension for those who take statins in long-term studies. If you're taking cholesterol medications, understand that you may be getting an extra 4 days out of life. My my thought is, is there a better way? Is there a different way? And if you've been asking yourself that, if you have any concern about this, you really should consider being at this workshop. It's coming up in 2 weeks, the Heart Health Masterclass. The third Mythbuster is saturated fat Talk about saturated fat, eating the meat and the eggs and the bacon and all that. Is that good or is it bad? Well, here's a study that showed that saturated fat is not associated with an increased risk of heart disease. They had 340,000 people in this study, followed from 5 years all the way out to 23 years. And they found that the intake of saturated fat was not associated with an increased risk of coronary heart disease or stroke or cardiovascular disease. The actual risk for heart disease was 19% lower in the group consuming the highest amount of saturated fat. So what does that mean? Well, again, we'll dissect this. We'll peel back the layers. You'll learn specifically what you should be eating for heart health at this masterclass coming up. So, the real thing to consider here is, how do you ask yourself and your doctor the intelligent questions so that you can make better decisions for your health, not just now, but in the years to come? What are things going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, God willing? What are you going to be able to do physically, mentally? What is your capacity going to be? And that's determined by the decisions that you make right now, today. So that's what I'm talking about here. You need to further your education on this subject so that you can make the best decisions concerning your health now and the future. And you can get the answers to all this. It's at the workshop coming up. We're going to talk about how to reduce your risk of heart disease by more than 90%. How to get better clarity on what your blood pressure and your cholesterol numbers really should be. We'll even cover things like type 2 diabetes, how to improve it, how to reverse it, and you'll learn the most powerful heart healthy supplements that you can take and eliminate the guesswork with all that. So you'll learn all this and a whole lot more coming up at our masterclass here, the Heart Health Workshop that we're having. It's coming up in 2 weeks. It's going to be on Tuesday, March 12th at 5:45. So as always, seating is limited. So please, if you're in the office now, go ahead up to the front desk. Make sure that you're registered for yourself, family members, guests, anyone that you want to be a blessing to. Make sure you get our names there, and we will reserve seats for everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love and appreciate you. Have an awesome day. God bless.